UN News.
You looked at this thumbnail last night and were like, what the fuck are you doing? Why is this thumbnail a thing? Right?
Yes.
And I wanted to have fun because Keith McHenry titled his article this, and this is what popped up in my brain. You know, just like a middle school girl trapper keeper, you know, that's what I was going for. Right? Like,
Okay.
Anyway, he writes the joys of anti-fascism and how community is the cure. So Keith McHenry, for those who don't know, co-founder of Food Not Bombs, right? You know, you've heard that name pop up plenty of times with people like Tortuguita recently, right? You know, he was a member as well of the Tallahassee Food Not Bombs, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, big group, feed the people. They do real well over there. So Keith writes, the authorities might be trying to link Food Not Bombs to their threats to stamp out anarchists and Antifa. This July, NPR's Current News published the story Shooting at Alvarado Ice Facility, Other Attacks? The New Normal? The report included this passage. Ara Yusuf describes herself as being close friends with many of the defendants, including Benjamin Song, who she said prefers to be called Susuka. Song, who was recently arrested, is accused of purchasing 4 guns found in connection with the shooting, according to court records. So we probably all heard this bit in the news about this ICE facility shooting, right? So Yusuf met them through protests and local activism, including the group Food Not Bombs, a nonprofit organization that distributes food that would otherwise be discarded to people experiencing homelessness. The government claims that there were 2 shooters, but only identifies Song. One defendant claims the group intended to launch fireworks outside the detention center on the 4th of July to provide solidarity with the prisoners on Independence Day. Kern reporter Carolyn Love wrote, at least one of the defendants told authorities he didn't know there would be any violence according to court records. So far, 11 people are charged with 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer and 3 counts of discharging a firearm in relation to and in furtherance of a crime of violence for the shooting. Court records don't identify who fired the shots. This suggests that it was an unidentified government informant that fired at the police when they came out to see what the noise was about. The Alvarado ICE facility shooting was highlighted by Trump and his cabinet at his October 8th Antifa roundtable. Trump claimed that in July, approximately a dozen Antifa-aligned militants stormed the ICE facility in Texas and then lured officers out of the building before firing dozens of rounds at police. They were crazy, frankly, shooting one Texas officer in the neck. The Soros Network, among others, were listed at Trump's Antifa roundtable as supporters of violence. Patel said his department is working with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who is allowing us to map out those networks through their financial criminal activities, which has been going on for decades. So again, throwing all these right-wing keywords, right? You know, Antifa, Soros, all that shit, right? So, you know, Scott Bessent was the chief investment officer of Soros Fund Management, a $30 billion family office. After graduation, Bessent went to work at the CIA law firm Brown Brothers Harriman, then did stints at the Soros Fund, Protege Partners, and others before Soros recruited him as CIO in 2011. In August 2015, Bessent announced that he will leave at the end of the year with a $2 billion allocation from Soros to start his own hedge fund. Just, you know, a freebie. Here, I'll let you loan $2 billion, you know? Soros Open Society Foundation provided funding for the NGOs that participated in the Orange Revolution and 2014 coup of Ukraine, as well as providing millions to indivisibles, including $9 million in 2024. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think they think Soros is the thing they think it is, you know, because they tend to go along with what it is. So, Food Not Bomb meals are a port in the storm of these times of authoritarian threats, building community, celebrating our independence, and cultivating a society of compassion outside the drumbeat of fascism. We can avoid being framed in one of the FBI's plots for speaking up when conversations or jokes about getting guns, suggesting arson or other acts of violence by speaking up and reminding them that Food Not Bombs is dedicated to nonviolent direct action. We aren't passive, but also we don't support the organizing of physical attacks against people. As our name makes clear, we are food and not bombs. I think they're pretty clear about that. You know? So, enter this guy. So, you've probably seen this on your social media feeds, at least in passing, right? And this, I know this looks like Michael Rappaport. It is not Michael Rappaport in a mask. We're going to get to who this is in a second. But let's listen to what Fox News has to say on this. This guy is supposedly an Antifa insider, right? Fox's News ex-Antifa member, right? So
insider Eric, who was part of Antifa for 10 years. He's disguised himself to protect his life. All right, so Eric, how'd you get roped into the whole Antifa thing?
Hey, Jesse, how you doing? It started when I was young. I got in through working with different groups like the ARA, Cop Watch, Food Not Bombs, when the punk rock movement and stuff when I was younger.
So he was a part of Food Not Bombs, punk rock, right? Fitting all the groups, right?
Growing up in Seattle, probably about 9th grade or so is when I started.
What'd they have you doing in 9th grade?
Mostly recruiting, working with youth, getting, and just going out, spitting out the message. And the thing is to, a lot of people get into it because they want to, so, there's an error, especially when you're younger, that, you're out here and you're doing something, and that's very appealing.
So was violence like the core mission of the movement?
At that age, I thought it was a perk, yeah.
So you got a kick out of it?
Oh, for sure.
And that's kind of how you recruited, like, hey, come join this crew. We're going to have some fun, get into some trouble, blow off some steam.
Oh, absolutely. Because you're young and you're idealistic and you feel like you don't have a lot of control in your life. And, so if you can go out there and make yourself a hassle, then that's better than being an anonymous kid.
That's true. So what kind of violence were you guys getting into? Like explosives or vandalism? What?
Yeah. So it would have been about 9th grade or so. Get on a few years. Growing up in Seattle, we had those the riots in '99, and yeah, I was ready to go, man. I had little Molotov cocktails in my bedroom and a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook that I had photoshopped or photocopied at the time from a friend of mine's older brother. It was just at the time.
So this guy is a clown in and of himself, but you might find out he's been used before. Like, this guy Fox has used multiple times, right? So, here he is, Antifa member, but FBI turns on Mexican mafia informant, right? I mean, they completely put him as something completely different, right? So here's Rodney Latstetter. Fox News has faced ridicule online. Go ahead.
Actor for all intents and purposes.
Yeah. So supposedly a former Antifa member, an ex-gang member, and guests who all appear out of the same build, eyes, and voice, leading viewers to suspect it's the same man each time. Internet sleuths recently compared screenshots and suggested the mystery guest resembles Robert J. O'Neill, the former Navy SEAL who claims to have fired the kill shot on Osama bin Laden. O'Neill, who's been a frequent Fox News contributor and commentator for years, has a long history of appearances on the network. The recurring use of Mac's figures resembling him has sparked fresh criticism of Fox credibility and its penchant for sensational, poorly vetted segments. So yeah, the internet
You know what though?
sleuthing. Yes.
Someone brought this up. Actually, I didn't know my camera's moving. Someone brought this up that I was watching earlier today. We're having a second round. There's going to be another round of No Kings protests this upcoming weekend. And already, Republicans are like, oh, we got to watch out for the crowds because these crowds are Antifa and like hate America and blah, 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 blah. And given like, people are saying this one will probably be a bigger deal because given, like the fact that the government shut down, the fact that like a lot of people on both sides are being screwed, the fact that ICE has targeted various cities throughout the country that has affected many people, the fact that a lot of rights are in process of being taken away for the big beautiful bill and all that people are still kind of freaking out about, the fact that economy wise we're still doing shit, you're going to probably have more of a larger coalition of MAGA and liberals together fighting against Trump. And then, so look, I'll just say to people who are thinking of going to be careful, because given what the Republicans are saying now, like they want a reason for the armed forces to bust in your head over the weekend. So and they're using that language like Antifa and like all these other things to kind of justify the idea of like, oh, we're going to bring the cops on you regardless of who you, even if we suspect you, which could be anybody at this point.
Yeah.
They're going to bash your head in. So this is very dangerous in terms of, so obviously this guy is nothing but a narc, but the fact that, so the media is not really helping matters either. But the fact that, especially this weekend, that people are going to be protesting, which people have the right to do, but our government, and because our politicians are so craven, that any form of dissent is going to lead to political violence on their end.
Right.
This is where we're at in the country right now.
And even though we know the No Kings shit is completely controlled opposition nonsense, not to say everyone going will be, but definitely organized by that. So, you'll see all your Democratic politicians put on their kente cloth and head out there, but it's going to be like, you got to be careful right now when the fucking Trump's administration is willing to put anyone on lists for anything and then just snatch you up and deport you for no reason. So, like shit's fucking, got to be careful out there. But on October 3rd, Fox News' Jesse Waters aired Antifa whistleblower breaks silence, warns of violence, interviewing an actor he calls Eric about how he got involved with Antifa. Waters starts by explaining Eric has to disguise himself to protect his life. He goes on asking, how did you get roped into this whole Antifa thing? It started when I was young. I got in through working with different groups like the ARA, Cop Watch, Food Not Bombs, and the punk rock movement. The pretend former Antifa Eric also refers to the WTO protest in Seattle and claimed he had a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook. Keith McHenry rewrote the Anarchist Cookbook after the FBI entrapped 5 young Occupy Cleveland cooks, including 2 Food Not Bomb volunteers, in an FBI-invented Mayday bombing plot of a bridge, and noticed that the federal complaint repeatedly noted that they possessed William Powell's book, which they admitted they had provided to the defendants. So, all the hype about anarchists and Antifa suggests that the federal authorities might start attempting to increase their disruption of peace groups like Food Not Bombs. Trump signed an executive order designating Antifa a domestic terrorist organization on September 22nd, even though there is no Antifa organization, so that can mean anyone could be a target. After that, he issued NSPM-7, Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence Presidential National Security Memorandum. Okay? So, on October 4th, Trump's aide Stephen Miller told Newsmax, every time we make an arrest, we are initiating an investigation into the entire domestic terror network. He adds the president issued a National Security Presidential Memorandum, an NSPM, making clear that it is the national security priority of the United States law enforcement to dismantle, disrupt, defeat, and destroy those domestic terror networks. So the Trump administration isn't only targeting organizations or groups, but even individuals and entities whom NSPM-7 says can be identified by any of the following indicia or indicators of violence. This is what they are claiming are indicators of violence, which include anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, extremism on migration, extremism on race, extremism on gender, support for the overthrow of the United States government, or hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on religion, and hostility toward those who hold traditional American views on morality. So really anyone with a thinking brain and a compassionate heart, says Keith McHenry. The FBI has used informants to suggest bombings and other acts of terrorism in the Food Not Bombs community, such as happened with the Cleveland Food Not Bombs, on our volunteer Eric McDavid, who was framed and sentenced to 19 years for an FBI-invented plot that he was not aware of, believing that Sarah, the informant, was just joking. The feds can try to cause infighting by hinting someone is an informant, so it's wise to never make such an accusation. Those making suggestions to use violence may have been encouraged by someone they keep randomly running into and otherwise are great and dedicated activists. But the main thing I would suggest is have fun and enjoy all the beautiful connections we make when volunteering with Food Not Bombs. Thoughts, Care Bear?
I mean, as I said, this is going to be used to weaponize any dissent. You know, especially now that you have a larger coalition now, given that people are struggling. And again, given that the federal government is shut down still, and we're about 2 weeks into that now.
Yeah.
That people are look, my hope is that something happens before Halloween, because by then, you know, federal workers would have gone without a check.
Right.
And I don't want to assume that federal workers have money saved up to be able to ride it out for however long they need to, especially now as we're heading into the holidays and people are going to be traveling, people are going to be buying more food and like all this other stuff. So it's going to be bad. And I think we've said this, like, I think early in the year, like things are going to get worse. Like since the spring, we were saying this. And I think we're now heading into that point where things are going to be bad. And you're going to have more of, well, there's two things that I noticed that's happening. Well, really one thing, but we've said this on the show before. It's the blame game now tribally in terms of, oh, like it's your fault. Like pro-Palestinian, like leftists, you didn't vote. So because of that, you know, we have Trump, you know, or versus on the other side, oh, you guys voted for Trump. You're an idiot. You should not have voted for Trump. Right. And look at how he's turned on you and all this kind of stuff. So we're kind of pointing fingers at each other. And I was saying this to somebody earlier today. This is the perfect distraction right now in terms of us pointing fingers at each other, blaming each other for voting the way that people did, where either way we're fucked in either scenario, It was just
Yeah.
a question of how fucked. Meanwhile, the corporations are getting away scot-free, licking their lips with the amount of money that they've been accumulating, regardless of who's in office, and are basically using their wealth to grab our politicians nuts in order for them to do their dirty work. So it's just the focus right now has been so bad on purpose in terms of us fighting each other versus who's the true final boss. And we're not even paying attention to the idea of, like, again, not even the politicians, it's the corporations and donors above them that are really pulling the shit. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about, I saw somebody who made a comment, about a MAGA woman who regretted her vote. And I always say, especially to liberals, you can't have that political superiority when you were willing to vote for a woman who was complicit in genocide.
Right.
So so you can't use that mark of holier than thou or politically better than any MAGA person, because and look, I'm going to go off on a tangent for a little bit, but here's the thing, and this is liberals. This is more directed at you because I see this mostly coming from you. That's why MAGA hates you, because you give this air of snootiness, of knowing more than them, of the elitism, that you look down on many of these people who in a lot of ways are not much better off than you, but you kind of come off as knowing better and all this kind of stuff that makes MAGA guys hate you. And, and it's like, we shouldn't be walking in with this kind of hatred for each other that we're not being focused on who's really the one that we really should be targeting. And as I said, with these protests, Republicans are already saying, or at least giving the signal of, we're going to cap people for any dissent that they might bring out over the weekend. And that could be towards anybody, doesn't matter who it is. So these are the people that you should be yelling at, not each other. But we're pointing fingers at each other, and that's what they want.
Yep.
And it's frustrating to me that, which in a lot of ways I understand, but your neighbor is not the enemy here.
Yeah, it's definitely up versus down, So, tale as old as time. Distract people with horse race nonsense,
Right.
But anyway, talking about these things is why we're demonetized. You can go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network or scan that QR code on your screen if you would like to help us out with a bit of a donation. We appreciate it. But, if you're like one of the poors like ourselves, you can just like and subscribe, hit the share button, leave a comment, let us know what you think. How dumb was that actor on Fox News? Otherwise, thanks for watching.